Welcome to the Fort Johnson podcast. This week's special guest is John James, former lead singer and co-founder of the Christian rock band, the Newsboys. John embarked on a bold move from Australia to the United States over 35 years ago with his band and shares a powerful message of hope and resilience. Overcoming a background of adversity, including being high school dropouts from broken families, the Newsboys achieved remarkable success in the music industry, including Grammy nominations and #1 songs. Beyond music, John and his wife Tanya work with individuals suffering from addictions and participate in the Army's Spiritual Resilience Program, emphasizing the importance of a healthy body, mind, soul, and spirituality. His story is one of overcoming odds and transforming challenges into opportunities, and the importance of hard work and surrounding oneself with positive influences. So let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you are watching our podcast, I am Jeff England from the Fort Johnson Public Affairs Office, and this is the Fort Johnson Podcast. Today with me, I have a very special guest who flew all the way in here from Malulabub. From Australia, and he is our motivational speaker as a special guest from the chaplain of our own personal little chapel over here on Fort Johnson. We got John James. John, welcome.
G'day, mate. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you in here. What brought you all the way over here other than an airplane and a long trip?
Yeah, a long flight. Well, I've actually lived here for a while now. I was formerly, with my previous career, based here and lived in the great country of USA for many years. I have a background in the music industry, which we may talk a little bit about that journey. I was the lead singer and co-founder of one of the all-time most successful rock bands ever exported out of Australia. You may have heard of my band, or the listener or viewers may have heard of my band. It's good for my ego.
Was it AC/DC?
I was going to say that,
yes,
mate. You read my mind. No, that wasn't the band. They were in another band down the road. We were on the other end of town, you know. But I had the privilege of, for almost 18 years, being the lead singer and co-founder of a band called the Newsboys.
Wait a minute. The Newsboys. I've heard of the Newsboys.
Yeah,
You were in the Newsboys?
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's so cool.
We had one or two okay songs. The rest were rubbish, but we were fortunate enough to have a few hits that took us to the top of the charts and launched us on this incredible journey. For the listeners that are listening or viewing, they may have never heard of the Newsboys, and that's okay. I'm not offended because I've probably never heard of any of our listeners either. But the Newsboys, we were fortunate enough to have great success. We went on to sell millions of albums, gold and platinum albums, Grammy nominations. I was telling the soldiers this week, the biggest concert we ever did was in Washington, D.C., in front of the Washington Monument, in front of 750,000 people.
Nice.
At a single show. It's funny, while I was on base, there was a lady, I think when we were working with the youth the other day, a lady there came up and said, when I mentioned about that concert, she went, "Oh my goodness, I was at that concert." So it was pretty cool, you know. So the success with the band gave us the most incredible platform now and opened up the most amazing doors. And we met the most incredible people, and it was the most wonderful journey.
Nice. I got to go to the. I know what it's like over in the mall in Washington D.C. I got to see. It was probably the only fireworks show that I've ever seen that I was really impressed with.
Right.
Yeah, it was really cool. They had fireworks that went up and it exploded into shape of a heart and Saturn with the rings and stuff. It was pretty cool.
Yes, sir.
And you got to play.
I did. Yes, sir.
That was with the Newsboys?
Yeah. Nice. If you go online now and, you can just go on YouTube and do Newsboys Washington, D.C. concert, and there may be a bunch of stuff because we played there several times. But in one of those videos that'll come up, that's me with the band and the backdrop behind the Newsboys. You see the White House lit up at night.
Nice.
And it was pretty awesome, you know?
Nice. What was the biggest hit of the night for you guys that night?
remembering the lyrics and getting through the concert and not forgetting anything,
You didn't have like a screen up in front?
No, we never had that much technology back then. It was usually fool's cap pages of paper, all on the floor everywhere, walking around, It's funny, a couple of years ago, the band did a reunion tour, and the manager who's still with the band from the days when we first started, I was the first guy he rang up. If you're going to do a reunion tour, of course you want the original lead singer. And unfortunately, I had other commitments that I had committed to, so scheduling wise, I wasn't able to do it. But I jokingly said to the manager, mate, I'm just so absolutely honoured that you would think of me and ask me. It's brilliant. I said, but let's be real. Two things. First of all, there's no way I could fit into my old gig clothes now. And secondly, crikey, mate, I couldn't remember the lyrics when I was in the band, let alone years later. So I'd be in trouble. But it's great to be here, and we're absolutely honoured to be here at Fort Johnson over this week and working with the Army here for the initiative they brought us on base for.
Yeah, what are you visiting Fort Johnson for?
Yeah, we're fortunate enough with the small part we play to come here and be a part of the military's H2F initiative that was developed with the sole intention to build peak performance in soldiers, understanding that a healthy soldier is made up of different parts, whether it's mind, body, ideology, but a soldier's spirit. And it's that spiritual element that gives a soldier their core foundation and balance of their convictions, their beliefs, their attitude in life. But when I say, spirituality, like with the H2F, spiritual resilience, I want the listener or the viewer to know that doesn't mean I'm talking about you have to be an overtly religious person. You don't.
No.
Having that spiritual core and that resilience, realizing that, first of all, you're not alone. You're a part of something much bigger. Whether you're deployed, wherever you go, you're a part of a much greater family and a reason behind. It's almost like a spirituality of the importance of our core convictions and beliefs of why we do what we do.
Yeah, I've always noticed that, when you're at the bottom, when you're feeling low, and you think that no one understands what's going on, there are others that have been where you are and can actually share the pain that you're going through, and you don't have to do it alone.
Absolutely, mate. To constantly let the soldiers, the men and women, and that's why we're here, to let them know that they're not alone. And because, I'll give you a few facts. In the last couple of years, depression, mental illness, anxiety has gone up, 320%. It's suicides are at an all-time high. Substance abuse is at an all-time high. And I think when a person gets to that place of feeling they're isolated or they're alone, or they've made mistakes, and where others may look at them sadly and think, well, there's no hope for that person, to let everyone know there is always hope, that you're not alone. And I think that's one of the most detrimental side effects, one of the side effects that we see so prevalent post now was what the pandemic induced with the mental anxiety, the fear, the trauma of isolation. Because the spiritual element of human beings, the way we're wired, we were never meant to be alone. We thrive, mate, when we're in community. When we know someone's got my back, not only through the good times, but through the tough times. It's easy to shout when you're on top of the mountain, but when you're walking through the valley, when you're struggling, when maybe you've been deployed and experienced a sense of isolation, loneliness of what you've endured, and now you come home, sometimes that can be such a difficult transition. But to constantly enforce, that attitude of hope, that you're never alone. It's like there is always hope.
Yeah, it's like screaming from the top of the mountain to where you want everyone to hear you. But if you're in the tunnel underneath, it echoes.
Yeah.
And when you speak out like that, that you're not the only one in there, and the light at the end of the tunnel can be guided. And there's others around you that can actually just guide you out and help out and stuff. And when you're I know when I feel down or when there are times where it's just nothing will help me.
Yeah.
It's just, I think that everyone's against me. Nothing's going right. There's no coming back from this.
Yeah.
An apology just isn't good enough, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then the next day when you actually have other people talking to you,
Come
it's
on,
like,
man.
no, this is fine.
Yeah.
I don't even remember what you were saying.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, thanks. Now no one's paying attention to me.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm currently working on a brand new album that I'm going to release this year. I go into the studio in about a month's time, and one of the songs addresses with that hopelessness. One of the songs addresses with somebody that gets to that place and begins to believe the lie that there's no way out, and they start actually making the tragic mistake of walking towards a decision of suicide. And the song talks about, I use the analogy of oxygen, where, you're in a room, you're surrounded by people, where it seems like, man, visually I'm not alone, but you can feel so alone that the very oxygen's going out of the room. You find it even difficult to breathe and gasp a breath of air. It feels like you're going under the water and you can't get up. And so, man, I think as long as there's people and shows like this where we can, whether in person or on the airways or on YouTube, where we can continue to remind and enforce that you're not alone and there is always hope. And I look at my life, crikey, not only did I enjoy incredible success, and I guess people idolize living the dream of fame, money, success in the music industry in America. So I've known incredible heights. But, your gifting and your talent and your ability may take you to great levels of leadership and influence and fame and success. But, mate, once you're there, how do you sustain that? How do you keep life's journey in balance with the pressure, the responsibility, the leadership, the endeavor, the dreams, the goals? And, man, I got an education. Yeah, I got a big education because we all want success. We all want the promotion, the position of leadership, of influence. But what sort of pressure does that put on your character, on your attitude, on your marriage, on your family, on your kids?
Yeah, I was just wondering, I mean, was your success overnight, or did you have to fight your way up, and was it a struggle? I'm sure if you did, I'm sure there were nights where it was just like, you got to give up because it's just not working.
Well, it's in spite of Newsboys, as kids wanting to post, if I can upload my video, it'll go viral overnight and I'll be an instant famous success overnight. The reality is, and I'm sure, the folks listening, the soldiers listening, realize, man, to achieve anything in life is a long, tough, hard journey. I was sharing a bit of my story, with the soldiers, and I was honoring them for their journey, what they've had to overcome, the opposition, the namesayers, the ridicule, the people in their life that said, forget it, you'll never get out of this town. If you're born here, like that Hotel California song, mate, you can check out any time, but you can never leave. And people can feel so trapped, maybe socioeconomically, maybe a lack of stability of family. Me personally, crikey, mate, I was born into the most toxic, broken, dysfunctional, messed up family on the planet. After my parents abandoned us, after the beatings and the abuse, I was separated from my siblings. I knew none of my sisters or brothers growing up. We were sent to live in homes. Academically, oh, mate, I don't even have a high school education. I was kicked out of practically every school I ever attended. As a kid growing up, I felt like there's no hope. As a kid, I already had my lifelong victim card in my hand. Don't expect anything more to me. Don't put any pressure on me to be something else. Don't hold me accountable for anything in life. Why? Because I'm a lifelong victim member here. But my life was impacted as a young teenage kid by a youth worker that had come to that rural town to work with street kids, problematic kids, drug kids. And this youth worker had the most profound influence on my life. For the first time for me, I met an individual that the first words out of their mouth when they looked at me and summed me up weren't, "Oh, you're useless, you're hopeless, man. You'll never amount to anything. There's no hope for you." But this guy, man, he had the ability to look at every person, regardless of their socioeconomic background, regardless of their color of their skin, their education or lack of. Man, this bloke, he had the ability to look at people and see incredible value and worth. You know, have you ever been around somebody and you're only around them for a few minutes, but they ooze just encouragement and affirmation? And man, this guy inspired my life. And he was the catalyst that impacted me, and he mentored me for 6 months. And then I moved away to live somewhere else in Australia. He inspired me to take responsibility for my life, that there was hope, that I didn't have to allow the words of others to dictate who I was. I didn't have to feel like, because, you know, you're hopeless, you're useless, you're nothing, that was my prison sentence for the rest of my life. Man, that guy, he inspired me to take responsibility, that I could dream, that I could hope, that I could do more. I didn't have to go through life, poor me, I'm a victim. And mate, it changed my life.
Yeah, the
Feel free to jump in any time, mate. I might even start asking you some questions now.
I would. I'm just fascinated with it, and it's like I'm taking it all in.
Right.
And you know, the problems. It's just that I'm listening so hard because I do have these problems, and the problems that I have are just, you know, sometimes they're my problems, and I feel like I have to take care of them, and no one else can help me but me.
To a degree, mate. I think, you know, we go into public schools across America inspiring kids not to have a victim mentality. You might not had control over the family you were born in, the upbringing. There's many things we can't control. But what you can control is the way you respond, mentally, physically, emotionally. Look, life's journey is this. I think life's journey wants to turn us all into victims. Mate, who doesn't go through life and you have curveballs thrown at you that you didn't see on a radar? You know, you can be a person that you feel this overwhelming drive to control everything in your life. But the reality is we can't. We can't control situations, circumstances, what other people will do, but I can control the way I respond. I love this quote. There's a quote by, if I can read it to you, by
I don't know,
General George C. Marshall, and he made this powerful quote. He said, "The soldier's heart, the soldier's spirit, the soldier's soul are everything. Unless the soldier's soul sustains him, he cannot be relied on and will fail himself, his commander, and even possibly one day his entire country in the end." And the ability of the sustaining soul of an individual. But a few things I've learned, the spirituality of that centering of my core values and beliefs is fundamental, not only to sustain me in any environment, but mate, when I get the wind knocked out of me, kicked in the guts, and I get knocked to the ground, you got to have core value there. And I've learned, mate, that life wasn't meant to be walked alone. No. There's some things I have to take responsibility. I can't be a victim, but there's other things in life, mate, I need you. Man, I need others. We were never meant to walk life's journey alone. You know, the way we're wired as human beings, the cognitive process of who we are, we thrive in an environment of, hey, mate, you know, we may be different. We may be from different mothers, different cultures, but we're both on this journey called life, and we desperately need each other, need the encouragement, the support. I got people in my life now, mate, that love me enough to get in my face and give me a clip over the ears and say, "Hey, wake up to yourself. Come on, you're better than that. Come on, you don't need to go down there. Come on, you can do better than that." And I'm thankful for those people, mate.
Yeah, so I've always heard over and over, it's like everyone's going to get knocked down, and it doesn't matter how many times you're knocked down; it's how many times you get up.
Get up, mate, and I'm so thankful for that. I think the journey, the spiritual resilience in my life through my core values and beliefs in regards, for me personally, and I can't speak for any of the other listeners, but for me, the core stability of my conviction of faith was the saving grace for me. You know, you may have heard the saying in life, people said, oh, if it may be in regards to spirituality, oh, that's your crutch in life. You need a crutch. I don't need a crutch. And if folks have ever said that to me, I kind of smile and say, nah, mate, you got it wrong. The stability of my spirituality, my core belief and value isn't my crutch. It's my wheelchair, mate. It's my pacemaker. It gives me the reason of why I get up, and no matter what flippin' life is going to throw to me today, I have these core beliefs and this grounding that, mate, I can keep going. And for me, my faith has been a powerful strength in that area. Doesn't mean I've always got it right. Doesn't mean I don't have battle scars or messed up at times. But like you said, mate, we get knocked to the ground and we get up. But unless you have that support system, not only with friends, people in life, but that sense of grounding through spirituality, I think it's brilliant. That's why I love, you know, the Army's, this program, the HUS Spiritual Resilience, to bring a healthy soldier that is made up just not on one of these areas, but the whole holistic thing. And you have to have that grounding of spirituality, mate, I believe.
Now, if you were to give an advice to somebody that's they're having a rough spot. I don't want to say that. I don't want to give it labels or anything.
Yeah,
but,
mate.
It's a speed bump. It's I say this to
unexpected things in life.
I say this to my wife a lot, and when something happens and she gets upset, or it's like I've ruined everything, or we're never this and block. Like, I keep saying it's just a speed bump. It's just a detour. We have choices. We can go over the sign, under the sign, around the sign. It's just a setback. It's not the end of the road. We have to, we just find an alternative way. What outlook, or what would you recommend saying to somebody that is having a rough spot in their life, and they're just seeing that every turn that they look at, there's no way forward?
For anybody, first of all, sometimes it's not easy to reach out and ask for help, mate. It's not always easy to reach out to people. We live in a world today, in a culture where, mate, you can be the Titanic going down. We've run out of fingers to plug the holes and fix the problems, but we can still be around people daily, going about our obligations and our duties and our responsibilities. Mate, we can be falling apart in an area, struggling, and people say, good morning, how you doing today? Oh, doing fantastic, thank you. And it's like, man, we just suck it up and push it down and suppress it, and the show must go on. But again, reminding the listener, we were never designed like that. You can only suppress the struggle, the fear, the anxiety, the difficulty for so long, and then eventually, mate, you're going to explode. And so often when you get to that boiling point, the way we relieve the tension is so often with a really negative choice or a substitute to numb the pain. So first of all, I want to encourage the listener. Reach out, and you got to swallow your pride and take that first step to reach out and extend a hand to somebody and say, hey, I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. You gotta bite your tongue, mate, and swallow your pride. Very quickly, I know you were going to ask something. I had the opportunity once to have dinner with some folks and that were hosting us for an event I was doing, and the host had their parents there, this elderly couple, and they'd been married for like 120 years, They were just old, mate, but they were still sharp as sharp. And the gentleman's wife, she had such a sense of humor. And I remember I asked her, we were sitting down eating, and I said, ma'am, you've been married longer than I've been alive. If you could give me any advice from your experience, from your journey, what advice could you give me? And she smiled and got all excited that I was even asking her this question. And she goes, oh, yes, young man, I'd love to tell you. She goes, there were days, my husband and I, on our journey, there were days when I looked at him and he was the most handsome specimen of male masculinity on the planet. And I'm like, whoa, time out. That's enough information. You've painted enough colourful picture. And, she said, there were days where I just melted in his arms. There were other days he should thank the good Lord that I didn't know how to shoot a gun. And he said, but I made a commitment. And she said, great marriages, we don't just magically happen. It's a lot of work. It's days where I may not feel like I love you today, because love isn't an emotion. It's a commitment. Obviously we fall in love with somebody, but if you're going to live your life on the emotion of how I feel, crikey, if you're married, we'd all be divorced. You make that commitment no matter what we go through, the highs, the lows, the good times, we're here for each other. I've learned on my life's journey of being married as a husband, mate, I have learned to apologize. Oh. I've learned to say, I'm sorry. I've learned to ask my spouse and say, would you forgive me? I messed up. I've learned to tell my wife constantly that I love her. But in saying that, talk's cheap, mate, because I know my wife previously, but my wife and I both divorced and remarried. For example, my wife was in an abusive marriage for 20 years, 22 years. She nearly died in the hospital until she had to get out to save her life. And she had men in her life that constantly told her that they loved her, but their actions did exact the opposite. So with my wife, words are cheap. I can tell her I love her till the cows come home. But what shows her that I truly do love her is the way I treat her, the way my character, my integrity, the way I cherish and honor her.
It's just like
did that answer your question?
Somewhat. I forgot what I asked.
About dealing with difficult times in your life.
I figure it's what you're saying is just like that group Extreme 2, more than words.
Yeah, more than
words. That song is more than words. It's there, and the whole thing, if you listen to the words to that song, it's exactly what you just said.
It's funny.
It's like you're very poetic with song. You should be in a group.
Yeah. You never know, mate. I'm if I can crack my gig clothes out and lose about 100 pounds, I might be able to fit back into it. It's funny. There's an old proverb that I love that it's probably one of the greatest poems ever written to articulate love, a beautiful historic poem. But the first line of this beautiful literature, and my wife knows it's one of my favorite readings. The first line is, love endures long and is patient and kind. My wife says, forget the rest of the poem. Forget the rest of the chapter, husband. If you can just begin to get that first line right, man, we're going to have the most amazing marriage for the rest of our life. So, I'm on a journey. I'm learning, mate.
I was in a play that had a line from Shakespeare.
Okay.
It was like, love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds, or bends with the bender to remove.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right. And so it all comes back to a saying that I've always said, marriage is like a garden. You have to till it. You have to take care of it. You have to tend to it, water it, give it love, talk to it. And every so often weeds are going to spring up, and you pull those weeds, keep it clean. Or if you neglect your garden, it will be overgrown and it will be destroyed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like just like life.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. But I also want the listener to know, or if you're watching online, someone viewing online or listening, they might say, well, that's great advice, but I'm single. I'm not surrounded by a spouse or somebody that's, you know what I mean? Because I even look at many of these soldiers here at Fort Johnson, many of them, what they've left behind, the journey, many of them, if they're single, coming here. Some of these kids here, mate, they're just out of high school. They're kids. That's what impacted me, the human element. The first time I was on this base back in 2016, and I'd never done anything like this before, but the platform through the band opened up some amazing doors, and this was one of them. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. When I came on the base the week I was here, I was moved deeply by the human element. And that might sound strange because as a civilian on the outside, we know we have the military, the army, and people do their thing. But you don't, as strange as it sounds, you don't make that connection. When I came on and sat down and ate with them, talked with them, heard their stories, their struggles, what they've had to overcome against all odds, that there was something of resilience in them that they refused to give up. And they kept going. I was moved, and what impacted me the most when I was talking to these young men and women, these incredible, these magnificent young men and women, is that they were kids. A lot of them were younger than my two daughters. There's times my two daughters, crikey, the greatest stress in their life is, I'm having a bad hair day or I can't get Wi-Fi connection. And yet here are these young men and women that have stepped up, taken responsibility for their lives, and if need be, they were prepared to put their lives on the line for freedom, to stop tyranny, to stop oppression, to stop evil. That blew me away, mate. I was humbled. And I said that to the troops yesterday I was talking to, and I think all week, I said, I am so humbled and honored to be in front of you all because I dare not even begin to imagine the obstacles you've had to overcome, the hardship, the rejection, the pain, the abuse, what price you've paid to overcome those heartaches, and here you are today standing. Doesn't mean life's going to be a bed of roses ahead, but man, I just honored them for the fight and their life's journey of resilience. Mate, it's pretty moving, mate, pretty moving.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive when you see our soldiers and stuff, and you realize that 18 years old, this is the largest group of 18-year-olds you've ever seen that have had to write their own will. When you start thinking about stuff like that,
yeah,
it's crazy.
Wow,
it's
incredible.
Anyway, it's great, and I appreciate you coming here, and I appreciate you helping out, and sharing your story, sharing your motivation, and I'd like to just thank you. Next time you're here, please come on in. Bring the band.
Yeah. Next time we'll get my wife sitting over there. She's actually the talented, gifted one, mate.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah. I'm actually her roadie. I carry her baggage, and my wife is also a wonderful recording artist. She'll be back in the studio this year for her new album coming out later this year.
Oh, nice.
So she's the gifted one, mate. I'm a very fortunate man. I said to the troops yesterday, as I introduced my wife, and she spoke about suicide, as she's had to deal with it with family members. I said to the soldier, okay, I know you're thinking it. As you can tell, I definitely married way above my pay grade, okay? So I'm a fortunate man. I'm a happy man, mate.
It's always been a lot of people's dreams to marry a beautiful, rich singer, the big old rock band.
What's funny is when I first met my wife, and I told her my background because she's a wonderful, gifted musician and singer. But I told her my background. She kind of hadn't really ever heard of me, so she wasn't really that impressed of who I was or what I did. So I guess she genuinely, truly liked me. So that's pretty awesome, mate.
Well, that's very cool. That's very
awesome. Well, thanks for your time, mate.
No, thank you for coming in. I really appreciate it. And I hope, and please, next time you're here, be sure to come in and visit. We'll get you back on the podcast.
Come on, mate. I look forward to it.
All right, great.
Thanks, buddy.
And I'd like to thank everybody else from the bottom of my heart. Just remember, life is a garden. Dig it. I'm Jeff England from the Fort Johnson Public Affairs Office. You've been watching the Fort Johnson podcast, and we'll be listening at you later. Don't be shy. Be sure to drop a comment in the section, share your story, and hit subscribe, hit notify, and we'll see you back here again.
That was easy.